Tonight we begin with our top 5 stories of the day. The global top 5 rundown begins with the IMF underestimating the cost of austerity. We learned that the UK has slipped into a recession a third time, meaning this is a triple dip recession as the UK's service sector fell. It fell dramatically across 2012, and austerity's economics was seriously underestimated by all nations. The IMF projected that for each 1% GDP cut in domestic spending, that lowered the growth rate by roughly 0.5%. Well, oopsie, it was actually, after looking for 2.5 years, 1.5%. That's a huge amount that can wipe out an entire nation's nation's GDP growth altogether during the course of a recession, and this is why we're now back into a triple-dip recession. Austerity is gutting the National Health Service as sections are being privatized at a very rapid rate to Tory pals, along with UK police commissions and massive investments in a new benefits tracking and aggregating system that just doesn't work. Sadly, Labour's opposition from leader Gromit, well, I mean, look at a photo of Wallace and Gromit and Ed Miliband and ask yourself how he could ever be taken seriously. Simply, we're just screwed, and it's getting worse. And alas, there is no outrage here in the UK, because here in the UK, we do, as comedian Rich Hall did, explaining British rage on Live at the Apollo. That's outrage. Want to see it again? It's just insane. Our next story comes from the United States, where the 48% of federal prisoners are now being held on drug charges. One half, and many are there as a result of the government's 3 strikes rule, where simple possession can lead to a life in prison sentence if it was a third offense. And crack cocaine is penalized with 3 times the length of sentence as powder sales. This is deliberately targeting men of color because crack cocaine is the cheaper version of the drug and it's only sold in areas that can't afford the powder version. Add into it Chris Williams of Montana. He faces a minimum of 5 years in prison for growing medical marijuana. In 2004, the voters of Montana passed a law allowing medical marijuana dispensaries. In 2011, after providing services for 7 years to these dispensaries, Williams was arrested in a sting and a raid by federal authorities. It was a broad sting across Montana after being promised he would not be pursued and prosecuted. They all thought they were pretty much in the clear. Everybody pretty much pled themselves to some sort of a minimal sentence, but Chris was very upset with the way in which this was handled, and he fought it all the way to trial, where he finally accepted a plea deal so he can possibly be released before his son graduates from university. The whole case stinks. It's just wrong that those who are trying to help people with glaucoma and other illnesses relieve pain and suffering are caught in this stupid administrative web for the for-profit prison industry. Our next story takes us to India. This is where a 23-year-old Indian woman was brutally raped and died from her injuries. She was raped by a gang of 5 men aboard a New Delhi bus. These men made their first public appearance in court, and they were charged with rape and murder. Sadly, violence against women in India is not unusual. A companion of hers was also assaulted, and as she tried to get help for the woman who eventually died, people stepped over and around her body, refusing to help. What is very unusual are the protests that you see on the screen by women in the streets. It's the first time that women have really come out to protest the way in which they are treated. And there appears to have been a tipping point in the battle for gender equality there. If you factor in what the U.S. Republican-controlled House has done by failing to renew the Violence Against Women Act before retiring this pathetic 112th Congress, the least productive ever, women are demanding that it be passed again. There are so many programs that were put in place since 1994 when this law was first passed that have educated and reduced domestic violence and violence against women in general. Next week on this program, we will devote our entire main interview segment to this story as we're joined on the program by Dr. Julia Jinkia of the Center for American Progress. She wrote a brilliant piece for thinkprogress.org. I think you'll want to go back and take a look at it, and you won't want to miss this interview next week. Now, everybody, please shed a tear. It's a very sad moment here. The Swiss private banking group Wegelin & Company will close its doors forever. It admitted culpability in helping wealthy Americans hide their assets. So rather than face scrutiny after 250 years, they're just closing down. They only hid $1.2 billion in wealth for 10 years. Wegelin agreed to pay $57.8 million to the U.S. in restitution and fines. That seems to be a very small amount compared to the amount that they actually sheltered. It all reminded me of the arrogance of Mitt Romney in his campaign when it came to taxes and evasion during the campaign. When did it become patriotic to use shelters to cut out the government? Here in the UK, people that are in very senior positions inside of companies don't want to have a salary. They want the money paid into their limited company so they can then pay a lower corporate tax rate. Local accountants came to us with a scheme. They made investments in feature films, and because of the expense, you were able to cut my already low corporate tax bills. My question is, who builds the schools and takes care of the roads? Who collects the rubbish and cares for the elderly? If everyone is so busy sheltering their income because the IRS and the HMRC are toothless, who's minding the store? And sadly, the truth is no one is. So just pay your damn taxes, please. And finally, the Middle East and Syria is now up to 60,000 deaths in this violent and stalemated crisis. Over the weekend, Bashar al-Assad shut down the internet in Syria, then took to the television screens to denounce the rebels, told them they would all burn in hell, and promised to fight until they were eliminated. During this period, also a suicide bomber hit a petrol station, as you see in the video behind me, killing 11 people and injuring 40. The violence is senseless. It's been going on for 2 years. It has to stop. But Russia's patience is still, even though wearing thin, is still there. They have interests, and Iran is also there lurking and causing all kinds of problems. So coming up on the program, Professor Juan Cole will help us sift through this story and get to the bottom of it. You're watching Worldview with Denis Campbell. Stay right here, please.